Hey there. Welcome to the Denver Church of Christ weekly recap. Welcome to my basement. It's great to see you. I thought maybe we'd spice things up with a couple different introductions today. If you liked one of those, if one of those particularly moved you, please let me know, and I'll try and include that every single time. Also, if you have some suggestions for introductions, I'd take them. At this point, I would definitely take them. But it's great to have you guys here. It was a great week in the church this week. For those of you who are looking at this for the first time, this is every single week we kind of review what happened in church, and we kind of review some of the meanderings of my own mind and thoughts from the last 7 days. In any case, this morning we had an incredible marriage workshop. There were over 800 people watching, which is really good for one of our marriage workshops. It's kind of the power of Zoom right now. It makes it very easy to come and watch this stuff. But we had people from all over the Rocky Mountains, and the Bickles, the Jacksons, and the Giles all shared from their, I don't know how many years of marriage for all of them, but definitely over 100 years between the three couples. And they shared the secret of what they thought was the most important thing that kept each of their individual marriages healthy. So we had forgiveness, we had things like mutual submission, and we had gentleness in there, and we had some great concepts, and then we had some question and answer for the panelists as well afterwards. It was an amazing time to be together, and so hopefully we'll do a lot more of those because they're really not too difficult to put together, and we make them pretty short so that people can kind of come in, get an hour's worth, and then get on with their day. But if you saw that, I hope you follow that up with your families. Also, we had a really great parent-teen devotional on Friday night. We started out with a trivia game, which, guys, there's a lot of families involved in this. And, we have at these parent-teen devotionals, there's been 2 trivia nights in the last 4 or 5 months, and the Zillmans have taken home the championship each time. And so I'm looking for some challengers out there for the next trivia night to see if you could dethrone my family. Now, I have a lot of people in my family, so that's part of why we win so much. But in any case, we had a great parenting devotional. Each of the youth and family couples, the Diakinos, the Perkins, and the Lewises shared a little bit during that time, and then they gave us some questions to discuss. My family is going to be discussing those questions tonight over dinner, over the pork chops that my son and I are grilling in just a few hours. But in any case, one of the things that I did this week is I read a new book. It's not new, but it's a new book for me, and it's called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction by Eugene Peterson. And if the name Eugene Peterson sounds familiar, he's written about 28 books, but I think it's probably most famously known for the translation of the Bible that he put together called The Message. And the Message translation is a translation that takes maybe what he would call a street Greek in the New Testament, and instead of translating it literally, puts it into terms that maybe a modern or average Greek, the way that they would have heard them, so that we hear them kind of in the same way. And then he did the same thing for the Old Testament as well. But anyway, he wrote this book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. This book's actually about 40 years old. So he wrote this a while back. Eugene Peterson died just a few years ago. But essentially, it goes through the Psalm of Ascents, which I'm going to explain in just a second. But I want to talk about the title, because the title is actually taken from Friedrich Nietzsche, who was a famous atheist. He is most well known for coining the phrase, God is dead. And he would definitely not be amused by the fact that Christianity is still going strong and that people from all walks of life are adhering to Christianity. He definitely thought that religion and Christianity in particular is what was keeping weakness alive within society. So obviously I beg to differ on that one, but I think it's ironic that Eugene Peterson named this book after a quote by Nietzsche. But like I said, he goes through the Psalm of Ascents. And the Psalm of Ascents are a series of psalms in the middle of the book of Psalms, about 14 of them, I think, going from Psalm 120 to Psalm 133, that the Jews used to sing while they were walking together in groups of families or communities on the way to temple to celebrate some of the major high holidays. And they would sing these songs on the way there. And some of those journeys only took a couple days. Some of them took a few weeks, but some of these journeys took a few months. And they would work their way through the Psalm of Ascents. And the Psalm of Ascents basically were psalms that they were almost used for you to wrestle with your heart, to deal with what was going on inside of you, so that you could come to God with a free conscience, with a conscience that would allow you to worship and to come to Him without hesitation. And so it wrestles with concepts like shame. Like one of the Psalms is about shame, and the idea being that you sing through the Psalm and you deal with the shame that's inside of you, between you and God, so that you can come freely into the temple. But there are Psalms about envy, about gratitude and excitement, and certainly about fear. And you would read these Psalms together with your family and sing them. And you would all together, although you're doing it individually, work your way through what you were dealing with inside of you. It's an interesting concept for the Bible, but the way that he writes about it is each day is a different psalm, and he kind of writes his thoughts in each of them. And I think one of the concepts that struck me most about the Psalm of Ascents is this idea that we are walking as a group to this destination. In this case, it was the temple, but you are wrestling individually in your relationship with God. You're doing both. You're wrestling as a group with God, and you're wrestling individually with God. And in one of the Psalm of Ascents, he is talking about this notion of how do we reconcile the problems of the world. So there's a big problem in the world, and humans are always trying to systematically solve problems, either through politics, through government, through NGOs, anything. Like we put together causes to try and deal with problems that are deeply rooted in the problem of sin, and the problem of the human condition, and systems don't really solve it. So even as a church, we put together all kinds of programs to help people. None of that is wrong, and all of that is actually very supportive. But in the end, it's not going to solve entire problems. And I think that's super relevant to right now, because we're all in our homes right now. We can't even meet together as church. All of our programs are a little bit sterilized because we can't be together, and some of them we can't even do. And so this weekend we were all supposed to be up in the mountains having a marriage retreat, and the only substitution that we could have for that was an hour and a half long Zoom workshop, which is great, and it was wonderful. But the reality is that's not the same thing, and we are being forced right now to have to deal with our walk with God without some of the systems in place that we normally have. And Eugene Peterson, in his book, he quotes a man named Peter Marin, who says this about this tension between us creating programs to help solve problems and what actually is effective in solving some of these problems. And he says this: there are cultural conditions for which there are no solutions, turnings of the soul so profound and complex that no system can absorb or contain them. How could one have solved the Reformation or first century Rome? One makes accommodations and adjustments. One dreams about the future and makes plans to save us all. But in spite of all that, because of it, what seems more important are the private, independent acts that become more necessary every day. The ways we find as private persons to restore to one another the strengths we should have now. Whether to make the kind of revolution we need or to survive the repression that seems likely. What saves us as men and women is always a kind of witness, the quality of our own acts and lives. And so, when I think about, there's a lot to unpack in that quote, but obviously what he's saying is that we can't systematically solve huge problems within society. God somehow does that through these individual acts. If we are faithful and if we act faithfully, he uses kind of our individual acts to help other individuals, sometimes groups, but you can't systematize those solutions. So something like the Psalm of Ascents, we couldn't turn the Psalm of Ascents into a program to help everybody work out their problems before they come to church on Sunday. That's not how that works. This is a great support, but more than anything, hopefully what it does is inspires us as individuals to act. And then God uses those individual acts to help other individuals. And that's discipleship. we try and influence one another, and then we pray to God that his Spirit uses these individuals to do great things in other people's lives. And again, there's just no way to systematize that. We just pray that God weaves all these acts together in a way that creates solutions that we never could have thought of, and that we couldn't have anticipated. And so anyway, this book this week has been pretty inspiring, and I definitely recommend it. It's not a hard read. Like I said, it goes through one psalm every single day. It's about 200 pages long, and it's very, very inspiring. It's a great book. A Long Obedience in the Same Direction by Eugene Peterson. If you're looking for something to read during this time of quarantine, that is a great book. But anyway, that's this week. Next week, we don't have a lot planned out of the ordinary. Of course, we have church tomorrow, which is great. And then during the middle of the week, each of the regions will be doing some of their own activities. I know that there are some midweeks planned for certain regions, and there'll be small groups getting together in other regions. And all of that is wonderful. But, we don't really have a foreseeable plan for when we get together as a church. We do see an end to shelter in place. I know it's been extended, and most everyone who's listening here, it's been extended till about May 8th. And then after that, we have safer in place, which doesn't change a lot of things other than more people perhaps going to work. It does mean that necessary groups of 10 or less can meet together as long as there can be social distancing. What that means for our small groups probably doesn't mean much. Most of our groups meet in homes, and I think it's pretty difficult to social distance with 10 people in a living room. And so we're not recommending necessarily that we get together in small groups at that point. But stay tuned. As the government gives us more direction, we will give you what we think we should be doing, all with the intent that we obey the authorities of the land and that we try and listen to what those authorities ask us to do. In any case, it is great to see you guys right now. I hope very soon to be meeting with you. My prayer is that at some point this summer we'll be meeting together in church again, or maybe the early fall. And I can't wait to see all of your faces. Hang in there. Please let us know if there's anything we can do, if we could pray for you. Please let us know. And please, please, please go onto our website, www.denverchurchofchrist.org, and go to the blog section at the very top. And we have all kinds of resources there. We have devotionals that you can do with your families. We have videos of other families doing devotionals so you can kind of see what they're supposed to look like. We have videos for men, videos for women. We have devotionals for teens and videos for teens. My wife and I have a marriage series up there, a series of videos up there for that. These weekly recaps are up there, and there's so much more. If you're looking to connect with the church in some way during the week, and it's impossible to do through Zoom, just go on there and watch a video or read what someone's writing. Maybe it'll creatively stimulate you or help you get you out of your rut. At the very least, maybe it'll just help you to feel that much more connected to your brothers and sisters whom you may not be able to see right now. Love you all. Praying for all of the families that they're kind to each other and they're gracious to one another. But honestly, my greatest prayers have been for those of you who are having to shelter in place all by yourselves. For those who are single or widowed or just not with their families right now, my prayers definitely go out to you. I'm sure this isolation is very, very difficult. Let us know what we can do for you. Love you guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you at church tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.